Welcome back. It's Beyond the Box Score. I'm Dan Schneider. That's Jacob Gibbs. And we're talking more offenses today. We're talking coaching today. The fun offenses, the ones who actually know what they're doing and make it fun to watch tape. We've got a lot of offenses I'm excited to talk about today. Jacob, how are you doing, my friend?
I'm great, man. Yeah, we got a lot to get into for sure.
This is Death Note.
Death Note is an anime.
Ah.
Yeah, it's probably near the top of the ones that I would recommend to Dan Schneider to start him off. I think he'd really like it.
Anime.
Oh, just going to make a general assumption, knowing nothing about the show. Just anime.
It's not a negative. I wonder if I have the attention span to do anime. Now, one of my favorite shows of like the last few years has been Invincible, which is that considered anime or no?
Not technically, but I mean, you can't call it that if you want it.
But no, if it's not, then it's not. So I did love
Invincible is just a cartoon.
Just a cartoon. Okay. Yeah. Even cartoons for me are tough. My imagination doesn't expand as much as I would like it to. You know, when I saw Death Note, I thought that was a screamo band, honestly. But you're too young for that, Jacob. You're a little bit just out of that range of like when I grew up and we listened to bands like Seosin and stuff like that, Under Oath. But I feel like you're an Under Oath guy. Are you an Under Oath guy?
Don't know what you're talking about.
Damn, that stinks. You would be an Under Oath guy if you gave Under Oath a chance. But today we're here to talk about football. That's what we're here to do. Beyond the box score. We're trying to go beyond the box score. And we had the luxury of watching some offenses that could make a massive impact on your fantasy teams down the stretch run. Are we starting today with the Bears? I think that's where we want to start with our boy Ben Johnson, correct?
Yeah, I'm just going to give you a couple crazy stats first.
Love a couple crazy stats.
Yeah, kind of get people in the right mood here for what we're doing. So the first one, I seem to have lost it. It was on the Arizona Cardinals. I'll see if I can find it. So I'll give you the second one. In the first month of the season, if you remove the first month of the season, the Bears rank first in the NFL, the Chicago Bears, in rushing success rate on running back runs, which I don't think is a huge surprise, but still ahead of a lot of these really, the Rams. The Rams are just an absolute juggernaut. They've been building this thing out with the run game for like 3 years now. McVay has just been building it exactly how he likes around Kyren Williams. Now he has Blake Corum too. They're first in the league in success rate by far on the year. The Rams are on running back runs. But if you remove the first month of the season, the Bears are actually ahead of them, which to me is just like so wild that we're seeing this type of success in the first year of Ben Johnson in this system here. So why do I remove the first month? Kaminanga wasn't really part of it. It takes time for the rookie to get integrated into what the offense is doing. And then also it takes time for this new offense, new coach, a lot of moving pieces here, a lot of rookies on this team to kind of find its footing. So if you remove the first month, as we get into like the bye weeks and stuff, into the later part of the season here, first in the NFL in rushing success rate on running back runs, Chicago Bears. You will never guess who's number two if you remove the first month from week 5 on for number 2 in rushing success rate on running back runs.
Let's think about this. Removing the first month. I'll never guess. That's the hint. That's a good enough hint.
AFC.
Now you're making it too easy. Almost not really.
No shot.
I'm never supposed to guess this, and I have no shot to guess this, but I want a chance at it. And is it the Bills?
It is the Cincinnati Bengals.
Wow. Yeah, Chase Brown, man. He's been super successful in the run game. I can't believe it. The team that the much maligned by Dan Schneider Cincinnati Bengals run scheme has finally figured it out, apparently.
Yeah, I haven't dug into it enough to know. Maybe it's matchups. I don't really know, but that is shocking to me. To Adam's point, the running game has been working better. I feel like you've noticed it with Chase Brown, and I've kind of felt like it's gonna fall off with Chase Brown, but maybe they're onto something. So that's just a fun stat to get us started here. Wow. I did find the Arizona Cardinals one. It was a stat that I've been looking at that I like is red zone drives per game, like how many drives got to the red zone. The best offenses convert in the red zone, but sometimes that's not always the case. Like sometimes it's stalling out in the red zone or whatever can lead to a worse result than I think the actual offense is producing. And so being able to get to the red zone, I think, is kind of like the backbone of having a good offense. The Arizona Cardinals are 5th in red zone drives per game on the year, which is just something I found as I was digging into some of the teams we're going to talk about today. We're not going to talk about the Cardinals, but that just shocked me. That I'm kind of a Drew Petzing truther. I feel like he's really got a bad rep because he's had the limitations that have been placed on him with the quarterback position during
True.
in Arizona. But this to me is like such a testament to the job he's done. And I did remove I removed the fourth quarter. I removed this entire second half to see if it was, garbage time was kind of playing into this with the Jacoby Brissett era here. And still fifth, even if you move the second half. So in the first half, they're fifth in red zone drives per game. It's been a decent enough year offensively. It's just that the defense has fallen apart. They've lost some close games. I think they're better than the record would show. And they've had a bunch of injuries on offense too. And so for them to be able to have like any level of offensive success is really noteworthy to me. And it's, again, part of the reason, the other part being the awesome schedule, part of the reason why I remain really intrigued by Trey Benson as a stash. If you have the space to stash him, I think it could be really, really fruitful for fantasy down the stretch for Benson if he's able to come back healthy.
And just a note on Benson, there was a point. I mean, his second to last season at Florida State, I think it was either the first or second most. He had the either first or second best forced missed tackle rate per touch in college football history. Like, we're talking about a player who was explosive. I loved watching his tape. I want to see when he comes back a little bit more of a focus on what he can do in the pass game. I always thought that was an underrated aspect of his film at Florida State, just the way he adjusted to the football and how mostly they just used him on screens. I think he can be used in a variety of ways there, even angle routes, X thrust, things like that. But it's a good call. Like, we look at this offense a little bit differently now, I think, at least with Jacoby Brissett than we did with Kyler Murray. We've always been Petsig fans on this podcast. We've always been believers in what he can do. Also, a testament to them, they've gotten a little healthier on the offensive line as well over the course of the year.
Yep. So we're not going to spend any more time with the Cardinals, but I did want to throw that stat out.
Yep.
There's upside. I don't know if he'll even have the role. He might be splitting with Bam Knight. The offense might tank. The offense might bottom out.
I don't think that'll happen.
Who knows?
Yeah.
But I think there's definitely upside for Trey Benson. Okay, so who are we going to talk about today? It's the Bears for sure. We're going to talk about the Lions and what we've seen now that we have like a month plus of Dan Campbell calling plays and potentially Amon-Ra St. Brown for Thursday's game. So definitely interested to dig into that. We're going to talk about Sam Darnold and the Seahawks. Not as good lately for the Seahawks, and then it kind of bottomed out this past week against Minnesota and Brian Flores. So a lot to dig into there. Going to talk about the Patriots, of course, just quickly on them. Going to spend some time with the Jaguars. A lot of the new coaches. Didn't get to every single new coach. I want to spend some time digging into Tampa Bay more. Didn't get to that today. Houston is another offense I want to spend more time with. That's a new coach. But just looking at, we've got a lot of new coaches this year, and a lot of them have been big hits in terms of turning the franchise around, but also for fantasy, we've had some really productive players from these teams. So let's start with the Bears.
Can I do a quick segment real quick on addressing the haters? This has been just a constant in our comments from this guy, DN. He says, Derrick Henry's having a great season. If you listen to this channel, you thought Derrick Henry is trash. It's the Ravens' biggest issue. When did we ever say Derrick Henry was the Ravens' biggest issue or that Derrick Henry was trash? I don't think we've literally ever said that. When we've pointed to the Ravens, it's always been about their offensive line taking a step back and Lamar not looking healthy. So address the haters, quick thing. Now we'll get back into it. I just want to occasionally, you got to call out a fact. Like, we just can't let that fly.
Good. Last week, I pointed out that Derrick Henry's play has fallen off, which is just objectively true. It's tough to get completely objective when you're talking about a running back and running back stats and everything. But everything I did to filter out the team level stuff made it look like this is clearly his worst season in a long, long time. So my assumption is that's what he's talking about. But Derrick Henry is still good and is still fantasy relevant. If you look at rest of season rankings, I still have him as like a top 10.
He still ranks pretty high.
Okay, Chicago Bears. Let's keep talking about running backs here. And you'll see Henry and the Ravens pop up on a few of these stats. So what I've got is running back runs per game from week 5 on. I gave you the Bears are first in success rate on running back runs, which is a percentage-based stat. They're also first in just total running back runs and running back rushing yards per game from week 5 on. 27 running back runs per game.
Just back it up real quick, just so for people who don't know. Success rate, what is that? What qualifies success rate?
Success rate it's qualified as a success if you get half of the yards required on first or second down. If you get a first down on third or fourth down, that's also a success.
Okay.
So the Bears have averaged 27 running back runs per game from week 5 on. The next highest teams are the Panthers at 26, the Seahawks, and the Lions at 25 running back runs per game. If you exclude the first month of the season, 24 for the Niners, the Bills, the Ravens, the Giants, and the Dolphins. So these teams have generated the most running back rush attempts per game recently as the season's gone on. The Bears at the very top. We've talked about the Panthers a lot. They're right there with them. 27 running back runs per game for the Bears, 27 or 26 for the Panthers. In terms of rushing yards per game, it's the Bears at 146 from week 5 on. The next highest is the Lions at 131. That's crazy, right? Like this is, we saw this with Ben Johnson last year with those running backs, and we're talking about Jameer Gibson, David Montgomery. The Bears are like way ahead of them this season, right? In his first season with a rookie round 7 running back and DeAndre Swift, who the Lions just said they didn't need, it's really remarkable. Some people might point to the schedule, but what we just saw against the Eagles suggests that this is legit. So I'm just really intrigued by what we're going to get here to close out the season. If you saw the thumbnail today, it is, winter is here. No, winter is not just coming. It is here. We've already seen one Chicago versus Philly game, and it was a lot of fun. And I think we're going to see a lot more of this. So 146 rushing yards per game for the running back room from week 5 on for the Bears, 131 for the Lions, 124 for the Panthers, 122 for the Dolphins. The Dolphins' run game is really working this year. Yeah. It's so weird. Like I heard on the Athletic podcast, they're like, this Dolphins team is so frustrating because like they fix one thing and then they just have like 3 more problems pop up the next year. And it's just been like that for 3 years. That is how it has felt. Because
like a personnel issue from their GM down. Yeah.
Yeah. They couldn't really run it all last year, but they've been running really well this year. And then the Bills, the only other team averaging 120 or more running back rush yards per game from week 5 on. A big change that I've noticed when I dug into the Bears is they're using way more motion. So these are their pre-snap motion rates through their first 4 games, 44%, 36%, 64%, 53%. From week 5 on, they're at 66% as an average, which is the 3rd highest in the NFL. They've been at 55% or higher in every game. They only hit that in one of their first 4 games. Winning and playing with a lead affects this. So I looked at situation neutral, and it was still one of the highest in the league. So I think it's just taken a little bit of time for Ben Johnson to kind of get everything that he wants to get going here. And now that he has, he's really just kind of dominating the league with our Bears offense that has a bunch of new pieces. I listened to Football 301, and Matt Harmon was like, it shouldn't really be that big of a surprise that the pass game hasn't come together super quickly, or the pass game is lagging behind the run game in terms of success and everything, because there's a lot of young players in the pass game. You're trying to incorporate 2 young receivers, a rookie receiver, a second-year receiver, a rookie tight end, Sure. Whereas the run game has a lot of veterans on the offensive line and everything. And to me, it's just like, as I dig into this, so much of it just is like Ben Johnson is the best. Like it's like him, Kyle Shanahan, McVay, like he's up there with those guys and what he's able to do. And the fact that he's doing it like so early with limited personnel in terms of him being able to actually choose these people and bring them in is just amazing. Situation neutral run rate on the year for the Bears is another one I wanted to point to, is 49%. So when games are close, they're running the ball a lot. Only the Jets, Panthers, and Eagles have a higher rate. So this offense is all about the run game. That rate was below 49%. This is, again, when the games are close. So trying to look at all things equal, in 3 of the first 4 games, it was below 49%. Since then, it's been really, really high. They're leaning into the run game. They're going way more under center. So their situation neutral shotgun rate before the bye, their bye week was week 5. So that's another reason why it's like looking after the first 4 games, because they had their bye week. And since then, it's been 44% shotgun rate when the game is close compared to 55% before the bye. So I think we're seeing that he's able to get everybody on board with the changes and the way that he wants to run this offense. And it's pretty much operating like the Lions that we've seen, where it's like under center, tons of motion, tons of play action, all of this built around the run game, and then being able to like layer things in from there, because that's what the defense is so focused on. And it's just amazing to me because like the Lions, it took some time. It took when Ben Johnson got there. It started to get better pretty much right away, but it did take time before they were like a dominant unit. And I don't want to say that we're there with the Bears yet. We'll see how they handle this next, to close out the season. They've got some really tough matchups. But so far, we've got a really good start here against the Eagles.
It's a phenomenal start. It's time for this type of football. We talked about this a lot on yesterday's show, but it's a testament to Ben Johnson. I think we've all seen a lot of cut-ups on what he's doing in the run game, but I do want to give credit to those players up front. Dahlman especially has just been phenomenal this year for them. Just a really good addition for them in the run game. They're moving bodies. Like I talked about this on the last with my co-host Nick on the Giants show. Like part of the reason the Giants were so unsuccessful on offense against the Patriots, they tried to run first approach and they just couldn't move bodies at the line of scrimmage. Like there are some offense lines that just can't do it. So I do want to give credit to those guys up front, but regardless, like the combination of those two things working together in conjunction with themselves sets up really well. I'll be very interested to see this game against the Packers if they're able to impose their will on them like they were against the Eagles.
For sure. The last stat on the Bears, only the Rams and the Lions have a higher under center rate in neutral situations. So I said they're doing that a lot more after the bye. On the year, only the Rams and the Lions are going under center more when the game is close. And we're going to talk about the Lions after our first break, but I just wanted to point that out. I think not exclusively, but a lot of the best offenses are built this way. The Colts aren't, and they were really dominating, even though they were using a lot of shotgun. We talked about the Bengals having a really good run game recently. Like they use a lot of shotgun. It doesn't necessarily have to be this way, but it is interesting to me that a lot of the best teams are doing this, and they're dictating. We've talked about this a lot. They're dictating what kind of personnel the defense uses a lot by what they show them, which there's a lot of notes on the Lions that we're about to get to with old Skipper for the Lions getting there a lot.
And bringing in Skipper. They do sometimes build the run game off the pass game. They opened the second half with a really nice successful pass to Jameson Williams with Skipper reporting eligible on the play. They just have to do a little bit better job of it. There's been a lot more runs than passes in those, and that brings us to like the main point when it comes to schematics and offensive football. If you ask any coach, like at any level of football, what they're going to tell you is the best way to find success on offense is to marry your run game to the pass game. What that means is to run out of looks and pass out of those same looks. And that's how you confuse defenses. And I think the best way to do that, as McVay has proven, and Shanahan as well, is under center. And that's a testament, by the way, to Ben Johnson. Like, you want to give him even more credit? How about what he's done, dude? Like, Caleb Williams entered the NFL with very, very, very few under center snaps. And even last year, they tried to get him comfortable in the shotgun. Like, he's had to get this quarterback up to speed with something he was not comfortable doing. And credit to, obviously, Caleb as well, who's done a good job of doing that. But it just, goes along the lines of, like, we were worried. I think we weren't worried about it, but we were just curious if this was going to fit from that standpoint. Like, Ben Johnson was a coach who likes to be under center. Will it work for a guy like Caleb Williams? And we've learned it will.
Maybe. Yeah. I mean, it feels good so far, but yeah.
I guess it's too early just to say that. Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff with Caleb that still concerns me. A lot of underlying stuff, but also it does kind of like point towards that there's so much more upside if he starts to like fit into this better, like it is amazing what they've been able to do with not only the young players, but your point there with Caleb, like kind of a systematic, like schematic fit that's a little awkward, but they're kind of getting there already in the first year in the system. All right, before we hit our first break, we'll get back and talk about some Lions here in a moment. I wanted to point this out from Johnny Airport. If Jacob grows his hair out any longer, we are definitely going to have to make an Ancient Aliens meme, which we've talked about at points on the show here. Like, that is kind of how I feel when I've had a little too much coffee and I'm just like going off the rails here, talking about the Bears, all these Bears stats, getting pretty crazy. But I love digging into this stuff. I've been excited to have some time, carve out some time to get into all the coaching stuff. And it's really fun. Because to me, it's like, this Bears offense was awful last year. It was profoundly broken last year. It was such a drag to ever have to watch the Bears, but I was watching them all the time because I wanted to know about these young players. And it's just like such a breath of fresh air, what we've got this year. Like, it's working not all the time, but like a lot of the time. And then like to come out here against the Eagles and do this is like so freaking cool.
It's why, like, you and I have put a lot of emphasis in our offseason shows and during the season on the importance of offensive scheme and coordinators. And we will continue to for fantasy football. I think it's at this stage, there are two cheat codes we can provide outside of just evaluating the film and the analytics. It's what is the scheme? What is the offensive play caller? Are they marrying the pass and run game? Are they sequencing their plays correctly? And then two, at least for me, it's always going to be offensive line play. And those are the two factors here. Like, the difference between the Bears this year and last year is the play caller and the offensive line.
Yeah, and we got here to your point, like in the chat, sounds like the Bears running backs are league winners. Maybe we'll
Yes, they might
see.
be.
But like when we brought that up a couple of weeks ago, seriously, everyone was like, "You're crazy about
Right.
Kyle Managa. Like Kyle Managa shouldn't even be rostered. He's backup running back. The schedule, the schedule, the schedule." And it's
Oh,
like,
the schedule.
like there are sometimes you can circumnavigate the schedule. That's why you go beyond the box score, right? Like is because like there's some things happening here with the coaching that I think like could allow this to work. Yeah, I'm really excited for it. We'll see how it pans out. All right, let's take our first break. We're 5 minutes overdue.
I wasn't ready to die.
The wait is over.
I need to know what happened.
Discover the mystery everyone's been talking about. School Spirits, every episode of all seasons now streaming on Paramount Plus.
All right. Detroit Lions, Dan Campbell, Dan Skipper. So Skipper, if you don't know who we're talking about, is an extra offensive lineman that they bring in. And I dug into this. They've been doing it way more since Dan Campbell took over. So across the 8 games before the Dan Campbell takeover, there were only 9 of these plays where they had an extra offensive lineman in total, 9 across 8 games. Since then, they had 7 in the first Dan Campbell game, 7 of those plays, then 5, then 15, including 10 dropbacks. That's insane to me.
Yeah.
10, like with an extra offensive lineman in, league wide. I dug into this a month ago because we're getting a lot more of this. Houston was basically doing it just because their offensive line sucked so much, but like a lot of teams were doing it just to like get some deception and stuff. So I was curious, and like league wide, I think the average run rate with 6 offensive linemen in was like 80% or something, because like, yeah, that's probably what you're doing. Some offenses didn't. Some offenses were doing it to get tricky. Arthur Smith and people like that were doing it a little bit. So to have 10 dropbacks on 15 of these plays, that's insane. Like a 67% pass rate.
True.
Anyway, 7, then 5 of those plays, then 15 in the third Dan Campbell game, and then this past week, 13. So that's back-to-back games with double-digit plays with 6 offensive linemen on the field, which is really unusual. You watched some Lions. You are very hopeful that this is the Isaac TeSlaa spot. I've got a bunch of data on like how they used the receivers in this past game in terms of like who kind of like filled the Amon-Ra St. Brown role. Is there anything from watching the film that you wanted to share? You can take it in any direction. I'm curious.
Well, I was a little bit more hopeful yesterday about TeSlaa's potential role this coming week before I watched the tape of the Lions this past week. Then, we got to see a lot of Tim Kennedy out there. Oh, is that his first name, Tim? Tom Kennedy. Tom Kennedy. He sounds like a politician.
Yep.
Tom Kennedy. He sounds like a politician, and quite frankly, on film,
kind of runs like a politician.
He runs like a politician. I sent Jacob a clip, 3rd and 5, 13:40 in the third quarter. If you guys have NFL film access, I don't know if it's possible for anyone to look any slower running that route than Tom Kennedy. Sorry, on that route. And I said to Jacob, shaking my damn head, feed Tessie. I'm calling him Tessie. It's a nickname that I just created. It's definitely not a nickname he likes. It's definitely not a nickname anyone's ever said before. But I just like to do it just sounds good to me, Tessie, for Isaac TeSlaa. So I said feed Tessie because, TeSlaa comes in, has a really good route to win in the red zone. Like that, his touchdown was such a great example of why we're excited about a player like TeSlaa, because it's not just the physical tools. It's that on that play, like he's running that over route. He understands the coverage so well that he understands to come back at depth toward the front of the end zone, toward like the what do they call the front line in the end zone? Why am I blanking on this? The goal line, obviously, to the goal line to make that catch and catch that touchdown. The later he runs that other over route, makes a diving catch. Like this dude's just a phenomenal talent, but I don't know if like as they try to replace what Amon-Ra St. Brown meant to that offense, I'm a little, I don't want to say concerned because it's probably what they believe is the right call based on the fact that Kennedy probably has a better understanding of the offense and understands where to be. But I'm concerned that Kennedy will kind of fill that short intermediate role that Amon-Ra St. Brown had for this game and we don't know how many games he's going to miss. Maybe it's this one and the next, or maybe it's just this one. So I'm a little bit more concerned about my TeSlaa take, I guess I would say, after watching the tape.
Yep. That's pretty much what I saw.
Sadly.
As well. TeSlaa was mostly used as a field stretcher, a space creator.
Yeah.
So Amon-Ra St. Brown, there's no Well, here first, like here are the per route numbers on the year for Tesla. 7% target per route run rate. 7. That's so incredibly low. He's run 154 routes and he has 6 catches. So like that's just not ever going to be something that you can trust for fantasy. But we don't necessarily know that that's going to continue to be the role.
Right.
Like that's how they've used them when the plan was, center the offense around Jahmyr Gibbs and Amon-Ra St. Brown. With Sun God out, with Laporta out,
Right.
it's possible that we see a different type of role for him. They really like him, and they've talked about that they think that he's ready to move into a different type of a role, that like he's shown what they need him to show in terms of blocking, in terms of like knowing the playbook and stuff.
Right.
And that it might be time for him to get some more looks. We just haven't seen it yet. So it's totally speculation. Nothing in this game suggested that he was going to be used that way. But and Campbell took over. So the past month, we've seen fewer go routes for Tesla and more crossers.
Overs. Yep.
So like maybe that is an indication that Dan wants to get him going a little bit more that way with some short catch and run type stuff. He's done the same thing for JMO since he took over, like fewer goes, more crossers, way more hitch routes for everybody in the offense. By the way, JMO crushed on those last year. He was like one of the most productive players in the league per like the fantasy points data's charting. They chart every route. So like win rate, yards per round, all that looked really, really good for JMO last year on hitch routes. And he's been by far the most productive Lion on hitch routes this year. So it does feel good for him. He had like a 36% target share or something crazy like that this past week. And I wonder if now that they've had a week to prepare, and they know, assuming that Sun God's out, that if we'll maybe see a different type of a role for Tesla, because the Kennedy guy is he did basically fill in and run a lot of the Laporta Sun God middle of the field kind of routes, quick out routes and stuff like that. That Sun God runs.
Boundary come in like little short in routes. Yep.
But he's an undrafted guy. He's never been a productive player. I went and dug into his data to see if I could find anything, like any game that gave any semblance of like, maybe this guy could be something, and like, it looks like what you kind of see on film. Maybe, you never know. If in this offense with Goff and everything, like he could randomly give you a 6 for 70 game or something. Like in deep, deep leagues, he's not the worst start in a shootout against the Cowboys, or if you're doing sports betting or DFS or whatever. But yeah, I guess while I'm really excited about Tesla, I'm exactly where I was yesterday when we talked about it. Whereas like he has probably the most ultimate hypothetical upside of any of these fill-in, AD Mitchell guys this week. But the downside is very real that he's just going to be doing cardio out there.
It's certainly possible. I'll say this, just like you lose Amon-Ra St. Brown early in that game, and we got almost a full game without him. But that, like, the whole game plan is centered around ARCB. So I feel like what we saw, and it bears out by what you just said with Jameson Williams' incredible target share from that game, was just, all right, let's simplify this thing. Let's run this offense through Gibbs and Jameson. And that's basically what it was. Now you have the full week to prepare. And by the way, if you're doing that, it's easy to see Kennedy kind of fill in as this guy. Like, he's been in the offense. He knows where to be. Goff can trust that he'll be where he wants him to be. Let's have him run this role. But you have a week to prepare. There might be a different outlook. I honestly do believe that. Like, Dan Campbell's a good offensive mind, and he did a great job when he first took over this offense. It obviously wasn't great against the Packers, in my opinion, personally. I didn't think they had a great game. But I have some hope. I don't want to say I'm like ready to put him in my lineups. I don't know if I'm going to do that. I picked him up in some leagues, Jacob. I put a good amount of budget on him just for the upside. I'm not sure yet if I'm going to play him, but I just have to hope that like something is going to look different with a week to prepare, especially because this Cowboys defense is more susceptible, I think, to what Tesla can do on a football field than what somebody like Kennedy can do out there.
Yeah, I like that. I'm pretty excited overall. Like, I do think there's a lot of upside. His slot rate did go up a little bit, whereas Jameson Williams' slot rate didn't really change at all. It was primarily Kennedy in the slot. There's some hints that maybe he'll. I think the most compelling for me is the coach speak stuff. Which, by the way, this is anytime you hear me referencing coach speak, almost exclusively, unless it's about the Chicago Bears, because my YouTube algorithm continues to feed me Chicago Bears Ben Johnson content as if I'm a fan. But otherwise, it's from Coach Speak Index, and I pay for his Discord because I really think it's valuable. So shout out to him, of course. And that to me is the most interesting, is like that they've been talking about wanting to get him going, and now they have a clear opportunity to do that.
Right.
Here's my rankings for week 14 at wide receiver. Before we move on here and take our second break, Jameson Williams, I have at wide receiver 9,
Wow.
which is the highest by far that he's been all year. Obviously, there's still some risk with JMO, but the role was really, really good this past week. And I think that we'll probably see them get him some layup, catch and run looks. And he could have 50 freaking points in this game, dude. Like if this game gets going, if it's cooking like Detroit and Dallas, like he could have such an insane game here.
Dome game. I love it.
So absolutely, he's locked in. Here's Tesla, lower, but I do think there's enough upside to justify starting him over some of these, Jaden Higgins, Pat Bryant, Luther Burden, Jerry Jeudy, these type of players. That's pretty much it for me. You can start Kennedy if you want, but I don't feel good about it. Like I would much rather start Cooper Kupp, which is who we're about to talk about, is the Seattle Seahawks. But first, we're going to take a second break here.
When you need your sports news all the time,
we've got breaking news to bring to you.
CBS Sports HQ gives you a snapshot of all the sports that matter to you. When you need your sports in a snap, find it on CBS Sports HQ, streaming free anywhere you are.
Okay, so Dan, you watched a lot of Sam Darnold. It was a pretty crazy performance from the Seattle offensive line. I watched all of the Sam Darnold blitzed dropbacks, which was quite a lot.
Yeah.
And I was amazed at how much they were struggling with this. And because it's like, who you're going against here. It's Brian Flores, like it's obviously, I don't want to simplify it and say like, oh, I know how to figure out what he's going to do up front. But like, you do know that he's going to be doing this to you. And the most likely place he's going to pick on you is right guard, right? That's the clear problem for your offensive line. But like there were so many plays where Darnold was just pressured immediately. So some stats on Darnold: 3.6 yards was his average depth of target in week 13. First game all year with an ADOT below 8 yards. So that in itself is pretty wild. But like this is the first time all year that the offense has been disrupted this way. And also I do think it was a conscious choice that like Clint Kubiak knew what was coming and just wanted to get it out quicker. There was a lot of these that brought the 8 out down with screens and stuff like that. But even still, they did not handle it well up front. So 1.7 seconds was his average time to throw in week 13. And this is something that's been happening lately for them, is he's getting heated up a little bit. In 3 of his past 5 games, Darnold's average time to throw has been 2 seconds or lower. It was at 2.4 seconds or higher in 7 straight games to start the season. And so Darnold, I've got a bunch of Darnold stats in terms of like how things have been developing for him over the season. I want to hear your week 13 film thoughts before I get into all of that, though. It's
interesting. We've seen this Seattle pass game, which has really just been JSN and Darnold, disrupted twice now, and it was 2 different game plans for it. What Shula did and the Rams did was simulated pressures, but a lot of dropping players into coverage and then disguised coverages that fooled Sam Darnold. That was one way to get him. But I really like what Brian Flores did, because sometimes it's as simple as like, what we want to do. I know what we want to do, but we're still going to do it, and you're not going to be able to beat it. And that's exactly what this was, because just like you said, they knew Flores was going to not only put players on the line of scrimmage and simulate pressure, but actually send the pressure too. Like, it's not just like all simulated pressures that confuse the Seahawks offensive line. It's a lot of actual sending extra players and extra blitzers. And Kubiak knew that, like you said. So I have in my notes, everything was quick game. The whole game plan was designed to get the ball out fast. I like what they did early, designing it to get out fast with Walker in the pass game. I felt like they went away from that Seahawks, which I did not like. But other than that, there was quick game concept to Kupp in my notes over and over and over again. Just a lot of quick game concept. But what it led to, in some chip and release plays, right? Like one way to handle pressure is you have your tight end chip and release and you dump it down to him. I think it's actually a very good way to handle pressure, but they didn't do enough of it. But a lot of it was just we know you want to do this, the Seahawks, but we're going to do it anyway, Brian Flores and the Vikings, and you're not going to really have a solution for it. And this is the problem with Darnold, right? There has never been this excellent solution for pressure, because as I'm going through the notes, like, there were opportunities for him. There was a 3rd and 11 early where he had Cooper Kupp open on a backside dig, but the pressure gets there and he just doesn't have a solution. Like, the option, if the only way to really beat it is either run and scramble out of it, which he did at times, but not enough, or just be so quick from an anticipation standpoint that you can get the ball out because you know where, like, you understand that the backside dig is actually going to be what's open on the play. So you can get to the backside dig faster. That's not something I really think Sam Darnold does a great job of personally. And that's not something that he's ever really done a great job. But even in taking the step forward that he has this year, it's been a lot of just unbelievable ball placement downfield, crazy arm talent type throws. So this may be, I mean, I'm not going to say it's a way to beat him, because not every defense is going to run it the way that Flores runs it. But this is he's had problems with this Minnesota defense, or with this Flores defense, and defenses like this in the past.
Yeah, I'm really intrigued to see what happens this next week. They've got the Falcons, and there's only 2 defenses that have a blitz rate above 40% on the year. It's the Vikings and the Falcons.
Yep.
So he goes back to back here. The Falcons haven't blitzed quite as much over the past 3 games. Their blitz rate's been down to 36, 15, 29% in those games. We'll see if they crank it back up here. He, I think, prefers to take shots down the field against the blitz, but because of the way the Vikings disguise things and drop a lot of players where he's not really comfortable with what he might see post snap, he didn't do that as much. And that's kind of how we've seen teams play against the Vikings. So the average depth of target for opposing quarterbacks against Minnesota this year is 6.9 yards, which is the 4th lowest in the league. The ADOT for opposing quarterbacks against the Falcons is 8.3 yards, which is the 8th highest in the league. If you like this kind of stuff, we'll talk about it more. I'll talk about it with Ryan Heath tomorrow on Mastering Matchups. This nitty-gritty data on matchups is interesting to me. And I think that's the way Darnold will prefer to attack. What we saw this game was unusual for him in terms of how he throws against the blitz. So on the year, he actually has an 11.5-yard average depth of target. He had against the blitz. JSN has a 16-yard average target against the blitz. Has caught 22 of 27 targets for 485 yards against the blitz. So that's 18 yards per target, 22 yards per reception for Jackson Smith-Njigba against the blitz. But they weren't able to do that in this game. He had 5 passes batted at the line, Sam Darnold did, which is tied for the most of any quarterback in a game this year. I think it's interesting. Yeah. So you brought up the Rams. They blitz at the lowest rate of any team that's faced Darnold, 22%, when we saw 63% this week, which is the first game all year that a team has cranked it up above 50% against Darnold. So we'll see what the Falcons do and how he handles that. I don't want to, people are freaking out about Darnold, I feel like, because he hasn't played very well lately. The performances have not been as good. And then we finally saw like the down game for Jackson Smith-Njigba, who's just been printing 20 points every single week. I don't want to say like, oh, we've got him figured out. It's classic second half of the season collapse from Darnold. I've got my eye on this Atlanta game and how he processes that, because this should be a defense that he can attack, I think. I've got a bunch more stats though. It is worse lately. So he has the second lowest. He had the second lowest first read rate this past week, 54%. This per fantasy points data, of course. 54% was his first read rate in this game. It was the second lowest of any game all year for Darnold. And his first read rate is down lately, 54% this game, 62%, 50%, 58%, 58%, 61% are his most recent games. So 62% are lower in all those games. Before that, the first 6 weeks, he had a 71% rate, which was the 7th highest in the league. So his first read rate is clearly coming down. His accuracy is down as well. So there are some reasons to maybe be a little concerned, but at the same time, like what we saw at the beginning of the year, you and I talked about, is like, this can't possibly sustain, because it would be like the best quarterback season of all time. He's here and everybody else is way below him in terms of like first to second place. So I looked at the fantasy points data charting to give some perspective of like the past month compared to his season long numbers. So on all throws, his catchable ball rate over the past month is not great. QB 26 out of 38. Overall, though, it really wasn't that great either. It was QB 21. Like outside of JSN, nobody's really getting open on this offense. Torrey Horton was a little bit, and I think Shaheed can help. But that does influence catchable ball rate. So if you look at highly accurate throw rate over the past month, he's QB 7. Overall, he's QB 3 on the year in highly accurate throw rate, which to me is like more impressive. I think that helps alleviate any concerns about him being like middle of the pack and catchable ball rate. On throws of 10 or more air yards, this one is a little bit concerning. Overall, he's QB 7, but over the past month, he's QB 22. And on these throws of 10 or more air yards over the past month, he's QB 15 in highly accurate throw rate, whereas he's QB 1 overall. So like before this past month, he was by far the highest because he's still QB 1 overall, including this past month where he's been average. And that bothers me a little bit, but it is a small sample size. We're talking about just throws of 10 or more air yards, over the past month. But that bothers me a little bit when it comes to JSN, right? Because that's where JSN has been cooking, is like the ball has been exactly where it needs to be for JSN. JSN creates plenty of wide open wins, but a lot of his wins are like, it needs to be here on the money at the precise moment.
Timing based. Yep.
Yeah. And so it bothers me a little bit that his highly accurate throw rate on deep throws is down a little bit lately, where it's more like middle of the pack. Altogether, like we should have been expecting this, I think,
Yes.
It's the 4.5 yards per run thing. It's like all of this like has to come down or it's the best season ever. And so I think we're seeing now some reasons why it probably will, but I think overall JSN is still going to be a top 5 receiver and has the potential to, do what we've seen him do. I think in this week against Atlanta, he probably will. And then Darnold, his numbers are probably going to be down a little bit, but I think is still a top 15, 18 type of quarterback for fantasy, is still fairly useful.
Yeah, I think that's perfectly fair. Like even if there is a blueprint, which I think there honestly might be, if I were coordinating a defense in the NFL, I would simply just play press. I would play a corner with inside leverage over JSN and then have a safety literally shaded over the top of JSN on every play, and then just play press man on the other side with Cup and just say, whatever, Cup, like I know you're not going to win vertically, so I'm just like literally not worried about the space behind you, and use that extra defender over the right side of the Seahawks offensive line to just kind of put Bradford, and now he's injured, or whoever's going to play right guard into really tough situations. But we know it's the NFL, and defensive coordinators don't just copy the blueprint like week to week. Like they're going to run their scheme. They're going to run their defense. As Giant fan, I know this all too well with Shane Bowen, their former defensive coordinator. And it just is what it is. So like, I'm not all that worried. There's not going to be anyone who can replicate what Flores can do. If the next like 5 matchups for your fantasy playoffs or 3 matchups were like Flores, yeah, we'd probably be screwed on JSN, honestly. No, seriously, we'd probably be screwed. But it's not. So I'm with you on that. We knew it was never going to be at the level. It's like 2 offenses we knew were going to come down just from a pure regression standpoint, were Seattle and were Indy. The question is, like, Indy, it may just be that Jones is a little bit hurt and he can't move. With Seattle, the question is, our team. This was the question you asked, I think, Jacob, maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago. Maybe it was even longer ago. The question is, did teams play Seattle a certain way early in the season based on Kubiak's reputation to take away the outside zone run? And are now they saying, you can run, God bless, we're just going to take away JSN? That's the one question I have.
Yeah. And like we have seen them run way more. I gave you those stats at the top of the show. I think they were second or third in running back runs lately.
Yeah, defenses are daring them to run.
The last note I wanted to make is that I don't think that we have like a clear Sam Darnold versus pressure issue, because the line was bad. Like you watched the film and it's that right guard spot especially, but altogether, like they were just kind of getting
immediate plays were immediately blown up by pressure. That's not on Darnold.
Yeah, but I feel like
to an extent, let me just make that clear. Like the greatest quarterbacks can process that faster and get the ball out faster.
Yeah. And all I was going to say is, like, statistically, it's been his best season versus pressure. He does have 6 picks against pressure. So he has the fourth highest interception percentage on pressured throws. And that's affected his EPA a little bit, but like he's 10th in success rate on pressured dropbacks, which I think is out of, again, 38 quarterbacks. So like it's been a problem for him in the past, and it's been something he's been slowly getting better at. I feel like there's above 50% chance that we're fine rest of season. There is like, we know who Darnold has been, and there's a small chance that he reverts back to that, right? But
Yes.
I don't want to just like nothing. I dug into a lot of it to see what I like, and we watched the film as well. Like, I don't feel like he's seeing ghosts. I don't feel like we're
I
like
don't think
full
he's
on.
seeing ghosts. Like the only thing is like, and this is the same thing with Jones. Both Darnold and Daniel Jones had both well outperformed numbers against pressure earlier this season. And we've seen with Jones, that's kind of fallen apart now. He's been horrific under pressure these last however many weeks. Darnold has been similar just in this game and then versus the Rams. But the issue is like these are two quarterbacks, Jacob, who I think rely a lot on first reads and I think rely a lot on the ability to understand where to go with the football. When you pressure them or when you send simulated pressures or even just actual blitzes, it does require a different level of processing. You have to be so aware of where the space is going to be post-snap, pre-snap. And not every defense is going to be like Flores, be able to send pressure and disguise coverages. Like that's a really good coordinated defense. Not everybody operates at that level. I want to make that clear. So we're probably fine on Darnold. We're probably fine on the Colts offense as well to some extent. But like they were afforded opportunities, these quarterbacks, that I just don't think they're going to be afforded for the rest of the season.
Yeah. All right. Anything else on Seahawks? You ready to move on from them?
Yeah, we can move on from them. Yeah. Good thing they don't have to face Flores every week. That's my main takeaway.
If he struggles against the Falcons, I think that's when you clearly like sound the panic alarm.
Yeah.
Because this sets up as a good spot for him where he can attack down the field. They use single high safety coverage at the highest rate by far. Yeah. And they blitz a ton. And like Tyler Shuck is the only quarterback with a higher deep throw rate than Darnold versus the blitz. So I think we'll see him get back to attacking down the field to JSN in this spot.
Agreed.
Okay, we've got the Pats and the Jaguars still are the two. Didn't actually get to talk about Clint Kubiak a lot. We're focusing on the coaching here. I think he's done a really good job, like Ben Johnson, of like dictating what defenses are going to do and attacking based off of what kind of looks he gets. We haven't seen quite as much of the pre-snap motion, play action, fantasy cheat code, efficiency boosting stuff as we saw in previous Kubiak tenures. It's been slowly creeping up. If you look at like neutral rates, his motion rate is above 50% on the year and is up to 55% since the bye. That was week 8 bye. So I'm happy to see that coming a little bit. But like you remember last year with the Saints, man, it was like 75%. It was like he was using motion and play action and combination on plays more than any coordinator had ever done. So it's not quite that still. Like his play action rate is actually below the league average, which is strange to me. I really thought it'd be really high. I thought that was like clearly the way to attack with Darnold. But I think Kubiak knows more than I do. Like this offense has been cooking.
Yeah.
So I'm just continuing to like keep an eye on this and dig into what he's doing. I think mostly he's like going straight drop back when people aren't expecting it, stuff like that, like getting lots of looks that he likes and attacking. I'm reasonably optimistic about them the rest of the way. Okay, so Patriots and Jaguars are the two new coaches that I want to talk about. The Patriots is just anything you've got to add, but just real quick, I wanted to give like the stats are nuts, man. They're so 7th in yards per game. They're averaging 250 passing yards per game behind only the Cowboys and the Chiefs. Like it's 200. That number shocked me because May still can't get that 300 passing yard game, but he's averaging 250 this year. Like that's crazy. I think it's coming. I think the big game is coming at some point. 10th in offensive points per game. So like, I do wonder if maybe there's a little bit of regression. Like a lot of the advanced stuff points towards them as being top 10, but not, top 3, top 5 or whatever. But still like, that's such a massive, massive jump from where they were last year. The run game efficiency has come up a little bit lately. We'll see. I'm curious how, like, if they can sustain that with the offensive line, you know what I mean? Where they're at with the line injuries. But overall, like, it's buttoned up. It's really an efficient, effective offense. Like they're doing a lot of things to stay ahead of defenses. They've just picked zones apart. Did you have anything on the Pats that you wanted to talk about?
Yeah, obviously I got a chance to watch this entire tape as we do for my Giants show. So it's just, and I'm the biggest Drake May fan you'll ever find. Like literally, I think Giant fans like, I've had enough of this. You're just tweeting about Drake May. Like he's not on our team. And I was like, I know, but I desperately wanted him to be on our team. So this literal second time I watched him play a game as a true freshman at UNC. But like, It's not like, I want to be clear, as much as I love Drake May, and my God, did he have a good game against the Giants just every time. The ball placement, the tight window throws, the velocity, the off platform throws, knowing when to run, knowing when to manage the pocket. It is also McDaniel, man. Like McDaniels, man, he's unbelievable. Just did the best job by far of any coordinator this year at eliminating Brian Burns. The first guy, Burns is averaging like over a sack a game going into this game. First guy to eliminate Burns entirely. And that's just like what he does. He understands the number one thing that you do well as a defense, and he takes that away every single game. But it's not just that, man. Like their solutions for zone and man coverage are so clear and so obvious for Drake May. And they're just on such the same page. Like, Drake May and Josh McDaniels. So I think this is, like we talked about, Ben Johnson and Caleb Williams. This to me is the best version of that. And part of that is because I think Drake May is at this point a much, much better processor than Caleb Williams. And to be quite frank, just a better overall quarterback across the board. One final shout out from this game. So I have they're going to continue to be a wagon on offense. They have multiple ways they can hit you. They're going to understand and solve what the defense is trying to do. Run game, I'll say this, my one comment on that, not a big fan of their run game. And I think the offensive line injuries are maybe an issue there. Unless they had Henderson, they pretty much did nothing in the run game against the Giants, which is a bad run defense. So not a fan of that. But last final note, Jacob, just from the film, it's not going to happen this year. It may not happen next year because Josh McDaniels' offense has always spread the ball around. But my God, is Kyle Williams a hell of a football player?
Yes.
When we saw the tape, that release off the line of scrimmage, dude, on that touchdown he caught. That's again, Paulson Debo's not a bad corner. And he had inside leverage, so that's kind of just a weird play. The Giants had him in inside leverage, and they didn't have a safety over the top because they bailed into like a Tampa 2 look. But man, that release was so lightning quick off the line of scrimmage. He created so much separation on Debo on that play. I have such high hopes for Kyle Williams. Like, that's as a boundary receiver, right? Like, everybody's like, oh, Kyle Williams, he'll be a slot only. No, he won't. Like, he just simply won't. Like, whenever he finally gets his opportunity, he'll be a guy you want. So I would trade for him in Dynasty. I would look at him as a player who may be like a breakout next year for us for a redraft. Just wanted to make that note. I'm so excited about what he can be because he can win vertically. He can win on the outside as a boundary. And obviously we know what he can do in that short intermediate area.
He's a stud. Shout out Kyle Williams and Trey Harris, two Beyond the Box Score favorites that I think have looked really, really good under the surface, under the radar a little bit. Only a 25% route rate for Williams this week, so that was behind.
Yeah, it's not going to happen this year, but
behind Kayshon Boutte at 75%, Matt Collins at 69%, Steph Diggs at 61%, and 36% route rate for Demario Douglas. So fifth among the receivers. Just want to point that out because he did have a good game, so maybe people want to go there, but one target. Diggs is who I need to talk about here because we got real excited about the upside for Diggs 3 weeks ago. But his route rate has been low in each of the past 2 games. Now they're heading to the bye. Maybe we see it crank back up after that. But these past 2 weeks have not been good. What I would say on Diggs is like the reason we're excited is 1, the schedule, and 2, like his efficiency this year has been fantastic on a per opportunity basis. So if the role does grow, which we saw in week 11 or whatever that was, against the Jets, that he had like a 90% route rate, that could be huge. And then the third reason is the Patriots on wide receiver targets are 7th in the league in fantasy points per game to wide receivers, and they're 1st in the NFL in fantasy points per target to wide receivers. So it's just like, this offense is great. Drake May is great. You can take that as a Diggs note, a Boutte note, whatever. Maybe it's just spread among all these guys, which is kind of what May is facilitated and is kind of what McDaniel's plan seems to be. But we have at least 1 week where they did go to more Diggs. Boutte didn't play in that game, but I think they use the two differently. I think Boutte affects Kyle Williams more and affects Matt Collins more. We saw Holland's route rate drop from like 75%. It's down to the 60% range, and Kyle Williams basically got cut out. I think Diggs can be like an on the field almost every play type of guy, play in and out of the slot and be the wide receiver 1 for May. And to me, it makes sense that you would want that you would want some kind of rhythm with a clear top guy, if need be, once you get into the big moments of the playoffs. To me, it's clearly him, whereas all these other pieces are complementary players.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And they're obviously playing for something really important, that number 1 seed, which is the bye week. We've got Bills, which I think could be a really good spot for him. Obviously, the revenge game and just how he performed the first one. The Jets, which you just talked about, and Ravens. That's what we've got down the stretch after the bye week for the Patriots. So 2 really good matchups, I think, there. So I think it's tough to say just because like they don't they don't need him a lot of the time. And they really like this game. Like the reason I don't think he played a lot was because they were up like 27-7 right away. And it really impacted them. But we've seen the Jets, what he can do against them. And that wasn't not, and that game I feel like was more back and forth. The Jets like scored early. So we'll just see how it is down the stretch.
Lastly on the Patriots, 72% snap rate for Ramondre Stevenson in the first half. Ended up being lower than that because it was a blowout, but it was 72% of the snaps to Stevenson, 41% to Travion Henderson in the first half of that Giants game.
Yeah, as much as we want to make it happen, and as much as Travion Henderson looked a lot better than Stevenson on tape, that's not how the Patriots operate. So it's going to be frustrating for Henderson owners down the stretch run.
Yeah. Okay, Jacksonville Jaguars. Got a bunch of notes on the Jags. Dan's watched a little bit of Trevor Lawrence lately. We talked about him on Tuesday's Beyond the Box Score as well. So the Jaguars are another one of these teams that is going to a lot of under center running and really leaning on their ground game. Liam Cohen hasn't gotten quite the results that the Chicago Bears have here in year one, but it's still been a huge turnaround for them. They have a 42% situation neutral, so score within 6 points, either way, winning or losing by 6 or fewer points. 42% situation neutral under center rate. 35% is the league average, so they're well above that, top 10. Not quite to the Bears, Rams, Lions level, but using a lot of under center. They've created a lot of explosive plays from under center, way more explosive plays in the run game under center than in shotgun. They actually have a positive EPA when running under center, which is rare to have a positive EPA. In general, passing is much more efficient. They have a 62% situation neutral pre-snap motion rate, which is good. I was hoping it would be a little bit higher, but I do think it takes time to get this kind of stuff going, all the wrinkles you want to your offense. We saw Liam use a ton of motion with the Bucs last year. 56% is the average, so they're 62%. So top 10 under center, top 10 in motion in neutral situations. They've leaned a bit run heavy on first downs and in neutral situations, above the league average. The other thing I dug into is the screen passes, because last year this was a historically efficient screen passing offense that Liam Cohen and the Bucs had. They're sixth in screen passing volume, like overall screen passes, they're sixth, but they only have 2 explosive plays on screens all year. They're 28th in total EPA on screens, which is wild considering the high number of screens. Both Liam Cohen and Mike McDaniel for the Dolphins have been far less successful generating EPA on screens this year, but they keep calling them at a high volume. Travis Etienne is the guy who's getting almost all of those looks. He has 17 screen targets, which is 9th in the entire NFL. Only Christian McCaffrey, Devon Achane, and Bijan Robinson have more screen targets at the running back position. So that is kind of artificially boosting him for fantasy, which is great. If you've got Etienne to get those just built-in targets as part of the offense, those are screen targets are worth more. Design targets are worth more fantasy points on average than checkdowns and stuff like that. One last crazy note on the screens, and then I'll give it to you to talk about Jags. Rashee Rice. So I said Etienne was 9th in the NFL with 17 screen targets. Rice has 18 screen targets in 6 games. So he's already 8th in the league in screen targets. He's averaging 3 screens per game. No one else is even averaging over 2. Just cracks me up.
Yeah. I mean, we did touch on the Jags a lot yesterday. I really think the biggest factor is they're having more in-breaking vertical or vertically oriented routes, which is helpful for Trevor Lawrence's skill set. As far as the screens go, like I think it's just a personnel issue. I don't think Trevor Lawrence is a good screen thrower the way he throws the football. And I also think they just don't have like Wirfs and Graham Barton and players like that, like he had with the Bucs, Liam Cohen, out on the move in the screen game. There's not in sync there from what I've seen there. But I do like what they've done. They're going to more tempo, they're going more under center, and some of these like intermediate and deep vertically oriented in breaking routes. That's where Lawrence can really rip the football and like utilize his skill set. And maybe it's just a situation, Jacob, where it's like Liam Cohen's starting to understand what works best for Lawrence. And to be quite fair, like Lawrence is a more limited quarterback than Baker Mayfield in a lot of ways. Obviously, I think we all know that by now, but there are ways to utilize and accentuate his skill set. And I do think they did a great job of that against the Titans. We'll see if it can keep up.
That's interesting on the Trevor Lawrence note that he's not as good of a screen thrower. Yeah, for all the volume, like I'm looking at it right now, they're pretty much a league average in running back points scored on receptions, running back targets, the Jaguars. It's been a kind of frustrating year for the Jaguars running backs, but I think I was at least happy to see that the screens are there. because like we've talked about like Clint Kubiak and the Seahawks a lot, and we thought that would be there, but it hasn't really been there, you know? And so that is kind of a staple of Liam Cohen's offense, even though it isn't working that well. Maybe it improves. That's just built-in volume for these guys, so that's good for fantasy in theory. I think that I've moved ET down a little bit rest of season. We talked about the rest of season rankings all the way through like running back 50, I think, yesterday.
Yeah.
So if you want to dig into that on Tuesday's show, I think I had ET at like running back 20. I think he could have a better close to the season than this last week might suggest. I know it was a bad week, but I'm not quite giving up on that. Although they're clearly using Tootin in short yardage situations.
Sure. Yep.
Which does affect him. Like he's probably going to lose a touchdown or two from this point on to Tootin, if I had to guess.
Agreed.
All right. Last one I wanted to talk about here. Not a new coach necessarily, but a second-year coach who had a lot of success last year in his first year. This year hasn't been quite as good, but as I dug into this Commanders' underlying stuff, it's pretty interesting. So we talked about Chris Rodriguez yesterday. We've talked about him a little bit over the past few weeks, and a lot of people are just like, this is a roster clog. This doesn't matter for fantasy. And I kind of feel that, like, you don't necessarily feel great about starting Rodriguez. But this is why I'm kind of intrigued, is that like this unit was really good running the ball last year. And that was with, a guy that they chose to just trade away this year for nothing, right? They just gave Brian Robinson away. I feel like we could see some success here from this ground game, and especially in some of these Minnesota and then the Giants these next couple of weeks. So I just want to let you guys know one last time here, if you believe in this, that I think there's a chance to like get ahead of it, because it could be some honestly pretty big games. Another, like, before I get into the numbers on Washington, we talked about Rodriguez, I think 3 weeks ago, and mentioned that like since entering the league, he has the second highest rushing success rate behind only Kyron Williams. And then he's been very, very good at like getting yards after contact and just churning out, short gains when needed. But there also is an explosive element to his game. And I think we started to see that a little bit this past week. He's not the prototypical like Jahmyr Gibbs, right? Like obviously, but he avoided a ton of tackles in college and in his first 2 years in the league. And that number just kind of come down as they've needed him to run straight ahead. But I wonder if there's about to be a lot more space in this offense, right? With Jaden Daniels back in, with Terry McLaurin hopefully back in and playing at a high level, like there might be more space available to the running backs. And, we saw early in the year that Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt was breaking off explosive plays at one of the highest rates in the whole league. And all of his advanced rushing data looked like the best running back in the league. That fell way off as things got a lot more congested, and defenses were creeping up at the offensive right around the line. All of a sudden, he has the worst rushing efficiency in the league. And it's like, what is this? Maybe it's the player, but also I think it has a lot to do with the circumstances. And so I think we could start to see more than just these, 15 carries for 50 yards or whatever for Chris Rodriguez, and you're just hoping for a touchdown. I think we could see maybe some upside here too. So the Commanders are 12th in rush success rate on running back runs on the year, even with it being a tumultuous year for Washington, ahead of the Cowboys, ahead of the Panthers, ahead of the Jaguars, the Lions in running back rush success rate on the year. 4.6 yards per running back run on the year. That's 10th. And their rushing success rate on the year, which is 48%, that goes up to 52% on plays with Jaden Daniels on the field. So with Jaden on the field, 52% this year, that would rank second, just ahead of the Bears and the Colts. Over the past month, the Commanders are 5th in EPA per play. Like point blank. Yeah, not just looking at running back runs. They're 5th in EPA per play over the past month. They're 11th in red zone drives per game over the past month. And that's including this game against Denver. We just saw, I know it was a wacky game and everything went to overtime, but like the only team that's engineered more red zone drives versus Vance Joseph's defense this year than what we just saw from Cliff Kingsbury and Marcus Mariota, Mariota was the Indianapolis Colts. The Giants had a good game too.
I can't get into that Mariota thing.
I
hated that Mariota. What was that? Where was that?
I got no idea.
It just goes by. We just call him Mariota, and all of a sudden, Chris Collins was like Mariota.
I got no clue.
Mariota. Dude, what's going on there?
So like that stands out to me. Like the Commanders just had 419 yards against the Broncos defense. It was overtime, but
Yeah.
349
Still though.
349 in regulation. Like that's one of the best games all year.
Yep.
And that's not, I think it just flew under the radar, right? Like, cause it was just this weird game, and people like Mariota's making dumb plays in the red zone and everything. And it's just like, Commanders don't matter, but it's like, well, they might, like you got Rodriguez for free and he legitimately might be a top 20 running back or something for the next month.
I mean, look, I was confidently discussing Chris on last show. If I look through the landscape of rushing attacks over the rest of the season, I feel way more confident about Washington than like I can go list team by team, and I feel more confident. They're generating in the run game through scheme, as we saw last year with Cliff. We have so much upside untapped if Jaden gets back in the lineup, as we discuss, as you just kind of discussed and brought up the numbers on. And third, Rodriguez looks good, man. Like that's the other part of it. I think he's more of a standard league play because there's zero upside in the pass game. But even so.
Yep. One more time, the matchups: Minnesota, Giants, Eagles, Cowboys. So we just saw what they were able to do against Denver offensively. And I think if they're able to like be in more neutral situations here with Jaden Daniels back, if he finds his rhythm by week 16, 17, they might be able to stay in those games and be a little more competitive. Then maybe we see, more than 11 runs like we just saw this past week. Maybe you see 15, 18 runs for Rodriguez. And maybe some more red zone opportunities. So just want to shout that out one more time. We'll see. You don't want to overpay for Chris Rodriguez, of course, but it really shocked me how good the underlying numbers were for this offense. So shout out to Cliff Kingsbury, because he's kind of had one hand tied behind his back all year.
Agreed.
That's all I got, man. That wraps up a coach discussion here for everybody. I hope y'all enjoy this kind of a thing. I think starting in the fantasy playoffs, we're going to try to be like very
matchup
concentrated and like pointed with our discussions, where it's like, what this has to be actionable for people. You know what I mean? Like, because like if you're watching at this point, you're probably in it,
Yeah.
So we'll definitely like gear more towards that and making sure like weekly that we're giving you exactly what you need to know for this week and how to navigate the landscape. But I like getting into this stuff where you get to zoom out a little bit, or maybe like really get into the weeds with some of these coaches and stuff, and contextualize a little bit better how we're getting some of these results for these players. So I hope y'all like that. I feel like there's so many shows where it's like, here's the start sit, here's the, you know what I mean? Where it's like,
we're trying to do it differently on Beyond the Store. We always have, we always will. We get into scheme, coaching, analytics, and film, and that's just what we're always going to be about. That's hopefully how we find you guys some big plays for the end of the season, and we're at that point now. We're in the playoffs, so I do appreciate everybody tuning in. A little bit of a nitty-gritty type episode and more of a 30,000 foot view at the same time, which I love. So thank you for tuning in. Really appreciate everybody in the comment section. Lively as always. Really, if you can, hit the like button. I see a lot of people listening, watching, but not a lot of likes. We can end the show here with some questions. It looks like producer Emma put up something here from a known troll to the comments. Am I allowed to say that on there? Farts is fine to say. Big Fart Zero. Just a classic troll, been a troll the entire time, but we respect some trolls. Big Fart says, Dan, can you bench 225? Hell no, I ain't benching 225, bro. In college I could maybe, and I bet I could, but I don't try to. I'm not going to injure myself benching. I'm just doing basically just repping out at this point to maintain. But he says, do you think Ben Johnson taking off his shirt to celebrate or win? What do you think of Ben Johnson taking off his shirt to celebrate or win? Should Adam reenact it if y'all win the 64 contest? Yes, please vote for us in the 64 bracket contest for best podcast fantasy football today. You can still do that. It takes 3 seconds, so please go and do that. Should Adam reenact that? I don't think anybody wants to see Adam take off his shirt, man. No, he should not reenact that, but maybe he should finally shave that little line in his head that he promised 3 years ago during Draftathon. Any other questions that are fun, Emma, that we can throw in here to end the show?
I just threw that one in because I think the Ben Johnson stuff is so fun. And also the 64, of course. I've seen a bunch of fun suggestions.
Oh, I hate this comment in here. Don't spoil it for us, but Lawson Smith said the chair company finale sucked. I'm not going to take that. I've absolutely loved the chair company so far. I've seen 4 or 5 episodes. To me, it's like basically Barry, but better. So I'll wait to judge, and I hope that he's wrong about that finale. Did you see it, Jacob?
Yeah. Do you want me to?
No, don't say anything on
Yeah.
it. Just say if you liked it or not.
Yeah, I liked it.
Yeah, okay. This is just a hater then.
Yeah. The chair company is not going to give you what you are expecting.
Yeah,
is
that's the best
basically-
part.
Yeah. And so like that, I can
That's
get,
what I mean when I say Barry. It's not this that it's like a dark comedy, which I do like. It's that Barry was just unlike anything else on TV, and that's what I've noticed with Chair Company through the
Yeah.
first 4 or 5 episodes.
I think so. The chair company gets into a lot of like mystery and stuff, right? And there's a lot of confusion as to what's going on with Tim Robinson's character. Like, is he suffering from some kind of mental illness? Is it what? I don't even know if what I'm watching is happening or not, or if it's just his weird perception of what he thinks is happening. So people have all sorts of theories and everything, and they want conclusion. They want to know like if what they think is going on is what's actually going on. And to me, like this show he could do this for as long as he wants. It can almost be like a kind
They
of
picked up season 2 already, by the way.
yeah. And I guess what I'm saying is like he doesn't have to give you any answers for it to be good. Like it could be that like none of it really matters in terms of like the plot, and it's just this bizarre show. It's just like a kind of warped version of I Think You Should Leave, where it's like sometimes you're invested in what is happening in this weird situation that's been created, but most of the time it's just about the weirdness and you're like just thinking it's funny. So I've really loved it. It's its own thing, like Friendship was really weird. It's not for everybody. I Think You Should Leave is really
Friendship.
weird. It's not for everybody.
Yeah.
That's definitely what we've got here.
No, another comment says, just got back. What the heck are you guys talking about? This is the end of the show. We're going off the rails a little bit. We'll wrap it up there. We'll focus it back on football. Hopefully you got some insights from the coordinators and the scheme we talked about today. Stay tuned for us. Tomorrow's Mastering the Matchups. Jacob and Ryan are going to get into some nitty gritty stuff. So if you enjoyed this, you'll probably enjoy that as well. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll talk to you soon.